Please, if you would, keep your mics on mute. And you also might want to turn your cameras off during the presentation unless you're asking a question or you're directly speaking, just for a bandwidth issue. So feel free to do that if you'd like to, but definitely please go on mute. You can ask questions during the presentation in the chat, and we're going to be keeping an eye on those. We can answer those as we go along, and we can also answer them at the end. So please feel free to interact with us. We definitely want to make this a great 45 minutes for everyone. So just in terms of introductions, I think we'll just go round table, and I'll start. I'm Melissa Melton. I'm CEO of Momentum Pharma. Sarah, did you want to go next?
Hi, yes, hello, I'm Sarah Everett, and I am the Chief Client and Quality Officer for IACR. I've been with the organization for almost 3 years now and have a 30-year background in clinical research, working across a variety of CROs and pharma organizations, having started my life also as a CRA. So it's great to be here today.
And I'm Cara Fothergill. I'm also with IAOCR. I've been in industry over 20 years. I've worked for big pharma, I've worked for smaller CROs, and I've worked for myself. Most recently, I was monitoring a good combination of studies, rare diseases, hematology, neurology, and quite a few complex oncology protocols. But I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you all. Thanks. This is our agenda for today. And I'm going to hand over to Melissa. Sorry, Melissa.
Okay, that's okay. Vicky, did you want to introduce yourself and the rest of the Momentum team quickly?
No, it's okay. I'll let you crack on because I know we've got a lot to get through.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
John?
Hello, everyone. John Melton, COO of Momentum Pharma. So good. Thank you for all attending this.
Hi, I'm Kristina Valenkova. I'm Global Operations Coordinator for Momentum, just helping in the background with the webinar.
Hello, I'm Alicia Nicholas. I'm Operations Administrator at Momentum Pharma as well.
Thanks, everyone. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk about why quality is important, which I know that we all know, but we're going to put it in a different context today and how we believe that AIOCR are doing some really important things. We're going to talk about when really good trials go bad and why and when that can happen, and then working together how we're trying to achieve some different standards in the industry and what that could mean to you as a CRA in terms of getting accredited. Sarah and Cara are the forerunners of AIOCR, and they will go into a lot more detail and be able to answer your questions about the projects and how you could become accredited as a CRA. And then finally, we'll share with you how Momentum Pharma is involved in what we're doing as an organization. Thanks. So starting out, I know that all of us have been in this industry for a really long time. We all have probably worked in various quality roles, and we understand why quality is so important to our trial patients, to their safety, their integrity, and then things that are a little bit more from a regulatory and legislative compliance perspective. But in short, the simple thing that we all know is that when we guarantee quality in our own work as individuals, as organizations, then we're guaranteeing the integrity of that trial and thus ensuring the validity of the trial data, providing a reassurance to our sponsor that we've all done our role, we've done our part to ensure that this study that we're working on, or studies that we're working on, activities that we're undertaking, truly do meet a value for the sponsor and a value for the patients. So to me, quality and competence is so important in all of our roles and all of these various levels. If you go to the next slide, we've probably, all of us in our careers, had the unfortunate opportunity to work on a trial that has gone horribly wrong and has failed to produce good responses and good results. For myself personally, I've worked on 3 trials across my 26 years in the industry. All of them had one thing in common, and that was there was no good standard of care treatment, and there still isn't to this day. These 3 trials were a depression study, a rare genetic disease study, and a pain trial. All of these trials went almost into a phase 2 or a phase 3 in all cases, and they were flawed. I don't want to go into why they were flawed, but each of them ticked some of these boxes that are on this slide. And I can tell you that the patients were broken, the sponsor was heartbroken, I was heartbroken, all of us who worked on these trials. It was a terrible thing. And I'm sure we've probably all experienced that, where you're working on something, the program doesn't give you good results, and it just literally disappears within a week. So I think that when you are talking about an industry that isn't so well policed or judged on a global standard, then you have companies like IAOCR come in. They're trying to do something about these issues, and this is what we really wanted to delve into on this webinar today. If you go to the next slide, please, thank you. What AIOCR do is involve all the stakeholders in this principle of quality. And this is why I'm a big believer and very committed, our organization, into their efforts. So you'll see a lot from us on LinkedIn and preaching to the choir, if you will, about this company. But this commitment across all the stakeholders, I think there's benefits for this, not just for us as CRAs, but for clinical research organizations like Momentum Pharma, for big pharma, for small pharma, for people that do eTMF management, project managers, for all different types of roles, there is a stakeholder that's involved in quality. And that, especially for the CRA aspect, is what we're here to decide how to do this best and how to engage with you guys if you're interested to go forward. Sarah and Kara are going to elaborate a lot more on this, but from my perspective, what I see looking in is that this is a fantastic opportunity to receive professional accreditation and recognition for you as an individual freelancer, or for you if you're someone who's attending this call today who actually works for pharma, device, biotech, whatever, a vendor, whatever you may be working for. But essentially, in going through the process, you would be part of an internationally recognized quality assurance team, a system that has accredited you. And I see this as elevating all of our careers and giving us a different status. It's something unique, and it's something that is solid. And it's something that differentiates you and your commitment to quality in this industry. So you would have the ability to go through the program. You would be assessed by IAOCR, which Kara and Sarah will talk more about. And then ultimately, if you're successful, and ultimately if Momentum Pharma are successful, we're undertaking the process now, then we'll be recognized as something a little bit different and a little bit more stand out for our commitment in this industry and in quality. What does this really mean for me personally? And this is sort of where I conclude and turn it over to the people who know a lot more about this. But for me personally, it means that we're reducing risks for our sponsors. They have the reassurance that we're accredited, Momentum Pharma. They have the assurance that we're working with accredited folks like you guys, and that you've been successfully assessed, that we have a built-in quality approach to our methods for monitoring and how we tackle all of these different types of projects that we work on as individuals and as an organization. So I think all of this really goes hand in hand with EAR1, and that's focusing on the fact that a study is quality driven proactively. And what are we doing before the study even starts, before the program even gets off the ground, to ensure that the study is fit for purpose and the people that are conducting the study are fit for purpose. And so it means a lot to me that you guys were interested in this, sharing this endeavor and learning more today. And I, again, just wanted to say thanks a lot for joining. And I hope that has helped, help you guys understand how Momentum Pharma is contributing. And I guess, one thing I did want to say is that we're not receiving any extra incentive from this. We're not being paid to do this. We're not, part of the team with IAOCR. We're our own individual company who strongly believe in the values that AIOCR are promoting. And so I didn't want anyone to make assumptions about something that's not true. We are truly doing this because we believe in what they're putting out there. So that's my spiel. And thanks very much, everyone. And I'll turn it over to Sarah and Kara.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you. So before I start, I'd just like to take some time to walk you through who IAC are, what we do and why we do what we do. But just before then, and following on from the last slide that Melissa shared, really just to add some further context to today as to how the CRA accreditation links to the work we're currently undertaking with Momentum Pharma. This is in relation to the business process quality certification. This focuses on 3 high impact areas. So as you can see here, this looks at workforce process quality, business strategy, and governance. And this global quality standard provides a system of assessment, its gap analysis, its process improvement, and it's an independent quality assurance certification. And for you today, it's just important to just touch on this because a key focus that's especially relevant to you is obviously the workforce process quality aspect. So what we do when we do this is we focus on the organizational processes that impact directly on the workforce. So for you, this is the onboarding and ongoing support provided to you by Momentum Pharma, any relevant SOPs and processes they provide as they work with you, and how this aligns to their organizational values and behaviors, because you're representing them when you're there with the clients, working directly with them. And just touching on what Melissa said, in collaboration with Momentum's drive to be recognised as an organisation working to high quality global standards, they're really keen to ensure that the research professionals that they employ yourselves also recognise the importance and the value. And as Melissa said, the commitment of having your own individual competence accreditation, which will really differentiate you in the marketplace. So today as I said, we want to just collaboratively share this information with you, help you understand the benefits for this individual accreditation, and hopefully answer any questions that you may have. So going back to who we are, what we do, and how we do it. We are the International Accrediting Organisation for Clinical Research, quite a mouthful that. And essentially, we provide international clinical research accreditation and certification from either a business or an individual perspective for a number of clinical research roles. So we don't just provide the CRA accreditation, we have a number of other roles, be that site roles, or be that within ICH-GCP or foundations, project management, so a number of different roles. And essentially, we're ensuring competency verification, which really drives world-class talent and processes within clinical research. And we also provide relevant training, either to map to a number of our accreditation programs, which are either delivered directly by AAOCR or they're delivered through trusted partnerships that we've established over time. So we were set up over 12 years ago now, and this was really in response to clinical research professionals looking for a professional recognition, a professional accreditation. And now we've worked in over 40 countries, and we have a variety of global customers, which you'll see later on some other slides, covering from CRO to pharma, in the UK, the NHS, and more globally, other sites and hospitals. And our real mission is to really elevate the standards and professionalize the clinical research industry. So we work within a regulated environment, and standards are not something that we simply develop on our own. We work with global industry leaders across different areas to develop these competency frameworks and best practice standards. And from there, we develop the IAOCR accreditation programs to map back to these competency frameworks. And these are then mapped to the International Standard Classification of Education Framework, also a mouthful, developed by UNESCO. So appreciate there's a lot of information here. But this basically means that all the programs are internationally recognized. And the reason we're mapped to this standard is because the world's education systems vary so much in terms of structure and curricular content. It's really difficult to compare national education systems in other countries or to benchmark progress towards national and international goals. So this provides a comprehensive framework for organising programs and qualification, and has an internationally agreed definition across countries. So that's why we map ourselves to that, and it can truly be an international standard that you achieve. We're also regulated by an external examination board, and they're regulated by Ofqual, which is the Office for External Examinations. and they have a responsibility for regulating all examinations and assessments at an international level. So in addition to providing accreditation, training, consultancy services, we work with industry leaders and regulators around the globe to develop these best practice guidelines and frameworks. And this is really, over the years, has been really valued by many industry leaders and really for facilitating thought leadership, driving quality best practice guidelines and developing further frameworks. The key thing for our accreditation program is that we do have an independent dual stage assessment and verification process. And I will go into that in a bit more detail later on. Moving on to the next slide, please. So really thinking about our mission and our vision and our values and what's important to IAOCR. You can see here on the slide, that our mission is to reduce the risk to patients by driving global best practice standards. And that's for clinical research professionals, sites, organizations, whatever it may be, on a global scale. And our vision, as I mentioned earlier, is to be that required standard. And essentially all of this is to deliver global best practice standards and protect the rights and well-being of clinical trial patients. And our values, as you can see here, is to do the right thing, commit to quality, listen and innovate, inspire trust and share success. In summary, to us, patient centricity sits at the heart of everything we do. So really ensuring that everybody working in clinical research does do the right thing and works to the highest quality standards will reduce the potential risk and protects the rights and well-being of all patients involved in trials. And as an organisation, we constantly strive to drive a culture of continuous improvement and share and deliver best practice with all the research professionals at all levels taking part in a trial. So how do we work with industry to drive and develop global quality standards for sites, organisations and peoples? So these three pictures here, you can see we've got the industry leaders think tanks, which I'll talk to you about, and the Global Advisory Board, and then also the task force. So the industry leaders think tank, this picture is from last year, last November. We generally meet on an annual basis. And this is an invitation only. It's exclusive for senior industry leaders and nominated directors from the clinical research industry. And it really brings together respected decision makers and change agents to really ensure that there are meaningful discussions and sharing of information, and that the learnings and outcomes can then be taken back into organizations and add value and inspire change. So people come from all over the world, come together, network, and have high-level discussions and debates. We have breakout sessions. We have obviously discussions from people who've worked with us so they can share their experiences. And then obviously we have other relevant discussions that people can be kept up to date with regarding clinical research, be that on a therapeutic basis or a pure research basis. The next part is the Global Advisory Board, and you can see here a lot of key names. And really, this is made of clinical research industry stakeholders, and it's across commercial, not-for-profit, regulatory, and different membership organisations from around the world. And you can see here, obviously, a lot of representation from the UK of the NHS, but we have obviously worked with other hospital sites globally. And the reason we have the Global Advisory Board is really because we're working with them to ensure that we drive process excellence. So that's to facilitate between sites and sponsors mostly, and then really drive that patient centricity that I talked about. And they generally meet biannually. They review the quality standards, and then they share that best practice framework and look at current guidelines to look at changing, if we need to, new standards and guidelines that we have. The third picture that you can see is relating to the IAOCR task force. So whenever we develop a competency accreditation program, we always work with industry experts. As I mentioned earlier, we don't develop these, solely on our own. We work with the experts. What's happening? What's current practice? How can we share this best practice back into the industry? So you can see that we've worked with a number of different people from task force, but we develop those competency accreditation programs together by gathering their input into the process. And I will touch on that a little bit later when we come onto our accreditation process. So in the next slide, actually, it shows you our recent flyer, which was for our clinical research project managers task force. So this is one that we currently have a project manager accreditation program, but we're actually updating. So what we did was we did a call out on LinkedIn to anybody working as a project manager globally, anywhere, in any role in project management within clinical research, to come forward and to work with us to look at our professional accreditation standards. Are we looking at the most current ways of working? Are we considering all the different ways of clinical research? So before we launch anything, we make sure that we develop this task force and then we ratify all our accreditation and assessment criteria. So from there, once we've got the assessment developed, what we then do is we then pilot it out before we launch it to ensure it's fair, it's relevant, and that it matches the role that we're trying to ensure people can be accredited for. And on an ongoing basis, what we do is we obviously regularly review those accreditation standards, and that's where we map back into our task force to make sure that we are keeping as current as possible. I'm going to hand over to Cara now.
Thank you, Sarah. So that's a bit about how we develop the accreditation standards, and I want to talk a little bit about what it is that we're actually accrediting. So as a CRA, we want to be known for many things. Obviously, we want to be organised, we want to be known as hardworking and compliant, but one word could be used to encompass all of that. And if you take the definition as it is on the slide, competence means the ability to do something successfully or efficiently, combining skills, knowledge, and behaviours to perform tasks to a specific standard. So ultimately, if we can demonstrate our competence, that's all of that. If we can demonstrate all of that, we can increase confidence from both sponsors and investigators, or in fact, any stakeholder that we might be involved in across the whole clinical trial landscape. And why is this important? Well, we already know that a huge number of clinical trials fail. As Melissa mentioned earlier, there can be lots of reasons for that. And of course, we know that the CRA is not responsible for achieving some of those endpoints. So we know that if a vaccine doesn't prevent a disease, that's not the CRA's fault. But in a landscape where efficacy is already difficult to achieve, there are other places where the CRA can play a much more significant role. And I'm sure we all feel the same in that we would not want a trial to fail because of operational and competency issues. It's bad enough that it fails because the drug doesn't work. We would really not like it to fail because of something that is an error. However, what we do see is the statistics proving that there are an awful lot of protocol deviations out there, as we know, and other areas which can compromise data integrity, and can compromise data integrity to the point that the data might not even be usable or is excluded from analysis, which of course then is a very sad waste of time for the patient, site staff, and of course everybody around that, including the CRA. So what can we do to maintain integrity and hopefully stave off those failures? Well, as CRAs, we concentrate our efforts on supporting the adherence to the protocol, data management activities, ethical conduct at site, and hopefully we demonstrate our technical proficiency and problem solving on the job by being that person that really is the go-to for the sites and working with them to they can reach out to you whenever they need it. What's interesting though is that whilst those site staff are GCP certified, and we probably check for their certificates in the ISF quite regularly, it's only recommended for other clinical research professionals. And rather worryingly, a recent review of data shows that there are a number of people, even experienced clinical research professionals, who might not be demonstrating ICH GCP competence. So what does the International Accrediting Organisation for Clinical Research offer to address some of these gaps? Well, for an early career CRA, there are 2 accredited courses. One of them's Foundations in Clinical Research, and one of them's an ICH GCP accreditation. And for experienced CRAs with normally 2 years plus experience, there's the opportunity to pursue a qualification which goes a bit deeper and as mentioned before, is mapped to the competency framework that's developed by UNESCO, which means that it can be called, as on the badge, an internationally qualified clinical research associate, or CRA accreditation. But it's interesting to think why we would need that. You know, why would this be beneficial to you as a clinical research professional, as a CRA? So what we would like to sort of underline here is that you can show your commitment to high standards of quality and ethics. You would be demonstrating your commitment to continuous development and learning, if you like, in an ever-changing landscape, which could well give you an advantage. It could give you an advantage when it comes to working with employers and investigators, or it could provide an advantage when getting more work with employers. There is a reference here to CV fraud, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but we've put a blog on our website. We can share the link. There is more recently, maybe somewhat linked to things being more easily artificially created, shall we say. There are noted from people who have been hiring CRAs and senior CRAs for years, they've noted that there is a huge increase in CV fraud, and it's not just small tweaks. It could actually be the creation of fake work experience or even the fabrication of qualifications. So having an internationally accepted accreditation could just set you apart from the rest. And these three people, along with many others actually, but these three people have done just that. You can see from the badges next to their photographs that they've got accreditations in different areas: clinical research project manager, clinical research trainer, and a CRA. So I won't read all of the details there. You will get the slides so you can have a look at those quotes for yourself. But they are individuals who've chosen to be accredited. So, of course, there's also, there would be some benefits to employers of hiring people who are accredited. So what might those benefits be? So there is the security in knowing that the staff that you have are qualified and that they've been independently verified, which in turn reduces organisational risk and demonstrates a commitment to high standards, ultimately contributing to the quality management system, not just the system on the computer, but the whole infrastructure around management of clinical trial and clinical research quality. And it also underlines a rigorous approach to staff hiring and retention and development, which can potentially put an organisation ahead of the rest, which is, I think, the direction that we all would like this to go. Here are some quotes from organisations now who have worked with the IAOCR and accredited individuals. There are a couple of companies and then a couple of NHS trusts. So again, really interesting quotes. I won't read all of them, but I think there are a couple of interesting ones. Training and experience don't necessarily equate to competence. But when an individual gains accreditation, I know they have been robustly competence checked. So I think that they are great quotes. And on that note, I shall hand over to Sarah to talk a bit more about the process of accreditation.
Thank you, Cara. So I'm sure by now you're wondering, what does it involve? How long does it last? How do you sign up? And also, how much does it cost? So the accreditation process itself, so before enrolling, we ask all our participants to ensure that they self-certify, that to demonstrate you have the right relevant knowledge and experience for the accreditation program. So that's the same across all of our programs, whatever the role is. So you personally need to verify that you have the relevant core competencies required as a CRA, as per this slide. So you're, demonstrating that you can actually map to those core competencies as a CRA. And then on the next slide, this is to show you what those CRA competencies are that we're assessing in the accreditation. Now, I won't go through each one, as Cara previously mentioned. We will share these slides with you after the webinar, but they're also listed on our website. So you can see there that they are the core competencies for a CRA that we map the accreditation program to. So the accreditation process in itself is a really rigorous, really comprehensive assessment of learning evidence. And as Cara touched on, we're looking at the skills, the knowledge, and the behaviours. And that's tested really through a blended examination approach of complex multiple choice questions, and then some short essay style or scenario-based questions. And that really provides you with an opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge and your experience. So in the short essay style questions, we very much focus on the I concept of explaining from your own experience so that you can really demonstrate that. And this two-step approach really enables us to evaluate both theoretically and practically your understanding and competence. To sort of show you a little bit more detail from a step-by-step journey and what you could expect to go through, I'll just walk you through this. So at the beginning, obviously, as I said, we have the self-certification to meet the entry requirements, and then register for the chosen cohort date. And I'll explain about the cohort dates a little bit later. And then you complete your accreditation assessment via an online assessment portal, and you're provided with a time frame for when that needs to be done. On the right-hand side, you'll see there that there's 4 weeks to complete the assessment online. So that's how long you have to complete it. Usually people say that it can take them anything between 3 to 4 hours to do the whole accreditation. Obviously, there is an MCQ element, as I've said, that may take you maybe up to an hour, and then the written assessment may take you up to maybe 2 to 3 hours. So we're looking at a maximum of 4 hours, and that really is the maximum. Once you've submitted your completed assessment, that goes automatically back through the online portal. It's then assessed by one of our internal assessors. At that point, there is kind of a mentoring process, if you like. So perhaps there may be some more information and the question hasn't been fully answered. But rather than saying you haven't met the criteria, what we do is we give you an opportunity to expand further. So we don't give you the answers. What we say to you is, and how would you explain this? And are there other reasons that would happen for this? So just something that kind of leads you to think a bit further, or maybe just to clarify, perhaps if you haven't quite understood the question, but just to enable you to demonstrate that evidence of your competence. So you have one opportunity to do that, and then you resubmit your work. And then once that's finally approved by that assessor, it's then passed on to our internal verification team. And that role really within the internal verification basically ensures that everybody is treated fairly and consistently. There's no bias to anything, and that there are standard ways of moderating and assessing people's work. So it's a very fair internal review. And then we have a secondary external verification review before the award of accreditation. So very much that sort of mentoring, supportive style approach, which hopefully leads people to be successfully accredited and certified. And then on the next slide, this talks really about the accreditation awards. So obviously, if someone is successful, they receive their certificate of accreditation, and then they will be awarded with designatory letters and an electronic professional accreditation mark badge. That includes an award date and a unique registration number. So providing you with a formal recognition of your accreditation and the CPE points and the accepted learning credits that have been associated with this program. And additionally to that, we also ask you as a CRA who's been accredited, if you'd like to be an ambassador for IAOCR. So again, an opportunity to raise your profile via social media and share your success, and perhaps do some guest blogs and have some published testimonials. So next slide.
Next slide is the cost, Sarah. I'll just run through this quickly, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So based on a price in British pounds of £625, the next course dates, the cohort dates, are running throughout this year, and we've planned dates into next year. Sarah's explained the process, and the first step in that process is to register using the link that's in this slide and is also, I think, on the last slide. It's also on our website, so it's live now. There are still a couple of weeks to register for the first cohort, which starts in July. And as Sarah mentioned, the time frame means that it's planned out so that you have 4 weeks to do the first submission, and then the final submission 4 weeks after that. So that's how we've planned all of the dates. So it is possible to get started right away if you're interested in getting accredited. And as Sarah mentioned, we've highlighted in purple here that you would be able to participate in kind of a career spotlight series, we're calling it, to raise your profile, which would be linked with between our website and LinkedIn and any other channels that we could potentially utilize. So that's the costs and how to enroll. And that was going to be sort of the end of our presentation, but we did want to get ahead of a couple of questions before we open the floor. So I'll just run this through and then pass over to Sarah, because we thought maybe some of the questions that might come up would be, you know, why should I pay for an accreditation? So I suppose the ultimate question is, why should I invest in myself and my career? So there are some very business oriented answers that you could give, like training of any kind which is related to skills and knowledge that you use in your business can be an allowable expense. So I think that that's something that would be kind of on the bottom line end of things. But there are also other things I wanted to highlight. So there may not be a requirement for clinical research professionals to gain CPD points, but there are many professions where it's mandated. And we work with healthcare professionals, so we work alongside professionals who maintain their CPD credits. And I think that if we put ourselves in through that same rigor and we're assessed in the same kind of way, then I think we can rightfully claim high quality work, best practices. We can basically you know, go beyond reinforcing what we already know, and we can challenge ourselves to grow. And there are some great quotes which I think we can go back to. You can go back to in the slides, but one of them was that the course got them to critically think outside the box, and another one was that it helped them to provoke reflective thought. So there are I think some valid reasons to consider being accredited, even if you've been a CRA for a number of years. We had some other thoughts about questions you might have, so I'll hand over to Sarah just to talk about who entitles us as IAOCR to grant accreditation.
Yeah, and I think whilst we've covered this area by some of the comments here on the slide here, talking about working with industry stakeholders and talking about the regulatory perspective of Ofqual being mapped to UNESCO and our external educational regulations, I think it's important to reiterate that we verify the competence of individuals, regardless of where you've received your training and regardless of how the skills were developed. But we ourselves participate in a regulated accreditation process. So all our assessors are regulated and have to go through an assessment process themselves to become an assessor. And obviously everything we do is overseen by an independent organisation. So this makes sure that the assessment is unbiased. And that we focus purely on the candidate's ability to meet the core competency standards developed by the industry stakeholders and independently quality assured by government recognised organisations. So hopefully that kind of reinforces obviously what's on the slide, but also what I've spoken to you about earlier. And then the other questions that you may have about what makes us different, why is the IAOCR accreditation different? So obviously we qualify the individual to an international standard. Not all qualifications are internationally recognised. This accreditation is. As I've mentioned previously, we are mapped to UNESCO, which truly gives us our international standard, and the regulatory aspect of Ofqual. The mentoring support that's provided when you're taking the assessment, so it's not a complete it and you're not successful, there is an opportunity to support you there from a mentoring element to help you achieve what you want to achieve. We're not a membership organisation with any annual fees. We do obviously keep a record of everybody, and we can verify an individual's accredited status, you know, with your permission, of course. And all our accreditations, as I've mentioned previously, are internationally recognised. So having a CRA accreditation is a formal recognition. You've met examination global industry standards in a regulated environment mapped to competencies. that demonstrate that. Whereas if you think about a certification, that recognises that the individuals have the knowledge they need to do their role effectively. So hopefully that what we thought we'd do by providing those questions and considerations was help to answer some questions that may be out there, but we really love to hear some questions from yourself. So I think as we've spoken for nearly 45 minutes, we'll pass over to any questions that may have come through. Thank you.
Anyone have anything you want to come off mute and put yourself on? To let us know if you have any questions or would like anybody to expand on any aspect of what's been covered. Hi, Jay. Did you have a question?
Hi, yes, I'm a career CTA and have been for about 20 years now. How valuable would this be for somebody like myself? I've done monitoring before. I've done assistant PM roles before. But as a consultant, how valuable would this be for somebody like myself?
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. I think, the problem is when you develop these programs, although this is very much mapped to the CRA, obviously there are elements of what you've just described in your role that you undertake within any organization that we work with. Different names are given to different roles, but it sounds from what you're saying is that you've actually undertaken some of the aspects of a CRA. So for you, it would be a great opportunity because obviously you will have covered many of the elements that a CRA actually has covered. And it would for you reinforce your competence and ability in your role. I don't know whether that's something you want to go on to be recognised as CRA or whether you want to stay as a career CTA. Regardless of that, it will reinforce your competence and ability in the skills that you have. It's a great question. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Stephanie?
Yeah, I indeed had a question. Sorry, I came in late, so I missed the first part, but somewhere on your slides, I noticed something about the GCP part and a CRA part, and I didn't quite understood what the difference was.
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, so we do have an ICH GCP program that is separate to this program. However, if you undertake the CRA accreditation, you can also, as part of this, have the ICH GCP program and have accreditation for that. So really, what we have there is an accreditation that essentially focuses purely on ICH GCP. That is only an MCQ, so there is no written or short essays involved in that one. Very, very much within 30 to 60 minutes for people to complete that. But it's really reaffirming your ICH GCP knowledge, which obviously we need to do. And it's a great opportunity to have that accreditation.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I think that Sarah and Kara, you did a great job of presenting the key benefit for the CRA and for other supportive roles on the accreditation. And I guess the takeaway too, I know we have a few more questions, but the takeaway too is for everyone listening is to think about how these benefits would really apply to you and your own career and in your own role in clinical research and what that would mean.
Absolutely, yeah.
Somebody else, Suzanne was wanting to ask a question.
Of course.
Yes, sorry. Hi, I'm sorry, I do not have a camera.
That's okay.
Just wanted to ask, I understand that this accreditation is internationally recognized. What about the point regarding legislation and regulatory? Is this country specific or how do you handle it?
So what we tend to do from a are you asking about regulatory questions within? What we tend to do, we don't actually ask people to demonstrate that regulatory knowledge. We have a sort of a broad brush, if you like, from a regulatory perspective. For ICH GCP, obviously it's different because it's ICH GCP. But when you're looking within a role, we don't tend to ask people to do a regional review of regulatory terms because A, they're changing all the time, and B, it would be too complex and too complicated to do it very much on a regional basis. So it's very much sort of an overarching regulatory perspective. That's how it remains international.
Okay, thank you.
So it's kind of the submissions that you would do, but they all vary by state, by country. It's impossible to make it generic. Yeah, but a great question.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing that question.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And Jay, did you have another question? Or is that from before your hand? Just want to make sure we got you if you have a follow-up.
No, that was from before.
That's from before. Okay, all right.
I'll put my hand down now.
You can ask another one. Anybody else?
If there is anything else that isn't clear, I mean, obviously a lot of this information you can find on our website too, but we will share the recording and obviously we will share the slides, and you can take the time after this meeting to read through, especially some of the comments that you might find helpful from some of the people who've gone through the programs. But as I said, this is the CRA program. There may be other roles that are relevant to you, and have a look on our website and see if there's a different accreditation program that may be of interest to you as well. As I mentioned, the ICH GCP is not a mandatory part of this program. You can take it as part of this program, and the offer is there to you to have that ICH GCP accreditation too.
Sorry, Sarah, can everybody hear me? Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Just on the note of the ICH GCP, I just wanted to let you know, we haven't detailed this in the slides, but we will follow up with an email. But we are going, for anybody who does sign up to do the CRA accreditation, we are actually going to offer the option of doing the ICH GCP accreditation as well, free of charge. So that's kind of like a bonus offer, if you like, for signing up for CRA. And just to reiterate as well, I know we haven't explicitly said this, but the accreditations that we've been talking about, and this includes ICH GCP, doesn't include any training. It's purely there to demonstrate your competence that you've gained from your work experience and previous training. However, watch this space in the future, because we will have some exciting announcements coming in the near future about some training programs that we're going to be launching to complement our accreditations. So thank you. I'll send details about that offer in the follow-up emails. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And I think that's a good point to mention again. I did mention it on my previous slide that you don't have to have gone through an IAOCR training program to take this accreditation. So for people like yourself who maybe have been working in this role for a number of years and who've previously had training, for you, this is a validation. This is to you to really validate your competence and knowledge and skills by taking this accreditation. But as Vicky mentioned, we are embarking on developing further training programs, which will also cover modules of as Jay mentioned earlier, clinical research. Perhaps that may be from CTA or from project management or for CRA, where you have those modules that can be consistent across those roles, but also then deep diving into the roles as well. So that is something that's ongoing in our development.
And Sarah and Kara, I don't know if you've seen the chat, but one of someone that's been in the industry for a great number of years and has an incredible amount of expertise has a really good question about AIOCR accreditation and how that's different from the ACRP, CCRA. And I think I know the answer, but I won't bumble it. I'm going to let you go for it, for the differentiation between the two groups, really. And for some context, this person is from the US, so they would have had a broad exposure to the CCRA accreditation from ACRP.
Yeah, sure. That's great. And it's really good to hear people have got that ACRP membership. And very much that is, as I touched on my, I think it's my last slide, talking about the difference between IAOCR and ACRP, is really looking at one is certification, ours is accreditation. So it's that internationally recognizing, doing an examination as such. And when, as I mentioned, we're not a membership body. So that isn't something, we are mapped to international standards, which ACRP is obviously US focused. We are globally focused. And ours is more about having that qualification, if you like, but it's great because that's kind of like a foundation, if you like, for ACRP to then move on to do the IAOCR accreditation. But obviously it's an individual request, you know, with somebody who has a lot of experience in the industry, as we touched on earlier. It's something about differentiating yourself and really validating your own competence. But we are very much not a membership organisation.
Just to follow on from what you've just said there, Sarah, just even if you already have a CRP certification as a CRA, this will complement that and further enhance your credentials, if you like, because of that international focus. I suppose that's one of the key differentiators, is that true international recognition of this accreditation, but they can work very well together. Complementary. Yeah.
And it's a great question. Thank you for raising it.
Yes, thank you.
And a couple more in the chat. Thanks so much, you guys, for your questions. It's really good.
Yeah, brilliant.
The expiry date and the recertification or reevaluation. What does that look like?
Sorry. Is there an expiry date, did you say?
Yes.
Okay, so we actually put the date of the certification on people's certificates. We don't have an expiry date because it's like taking an exam. Once you've taken the exam and you've passed it, you've qualified, we would say that that's yours and it's yours for life. However, I would add the caveat to that there are changes, as we know, all the time in the industry. And if things change so much, so dramatically, then obviously it would be recommended that you do consider taking that accreditation again within time. But it is date stamped, it's time stamped, so it's not going to expire, but it's down to the individual to, you know, acknowledge that they took that accreditation, I don't know, say if they took it 10 years ago, whether it's something you would want to then revalidate at a later date.
Okay. Anybody else have any last minute questions? Looks like not.
Thank you so much. We've had some great questions. Thank you very much. It's always great when someone raises a question because it always prompts someone else to think, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So it's great. Thank you. It's great to have your participation.
Absolutely. And knowing so many people on this call, you know, I can definitely vouch for people's integrity, for their high standards. I know what a difference this has made to our company and to the studies that we've had the privilege to work on with many of the people that have joined this call. And I just also want to say thanks so much for joining. And if you feel like taking another step to be assessed and accredited, it would benefit your career, I absolutely encourage you to go for it. And if there's any questions or anything that you have, please let Kara, Vicky, Sarah know, and let us at Momentum Pharma know when you've reached your milestone, because we would absolutely love to shout that from the rooftops and support you and celebrate with you. And hopefully we'll reach our own milestone and you guys can do that for us as well. So it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you and share this information with you today. And thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you very much too. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.